Before I even begin to tackle our passages today, this is a good time to inform/remind you that the Bible is actually not a book. We think it is because someone bound it all into one volume at some point, but in fact, it's many books written from many different points of view across time. And not only that, but each book records many voices that themselves conflict in various ways. It's cacophonous. It's like the way dinner used to be at my grandparents' house when I was a kid. Always voices on top of voices, layered on each other, arguing, talking over each other, vying for the floor. At one end of the table, my grandfather got his points in by dropping these little witty asides into the pockets in the conversation. At the other end of the table would be my grandfather, 5 feet tall, with a cherubic cloud of white hair, parting the waters of conversation by braying long syllables over everyone else. That's what the Bible's like. It's a big, raucous, multi-generational conversation jostling slowly over time toward a deeper understanding of God. Take our Old Testament passage, for example. It presents this amazing encounter in which Abraham bargains with God, talks God down to save Sodom for the sake of 50 righteous men, then 45 righteous men, then 40, 30, 20, 10, and by implication, right on down. Well, that settles the argument. But then, in what comes immediately after our passage today, God does not save Sodom on account of Lot's righteousness and his household. No, he tells Lot to skip town and then completely scorches Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes. So there's an argument between these two passages about the nature of God. Is our God a God who is willing to destroy the innocent along with the guilty? Or is our God a God who responds to human pleading and shows mercy? In his book on Genesis and the Interpretation series, the scholar Walter Brueggemann says that the passage we have today was added later by somebody in order to emphasize the merciful, gracious nature of God and contradict the vengeful God who destroys Sodom and Gomorrah in the story that follows. So there's some comfort in this, I suppose. It's certainly closer to the kind of God I'd prefer, a God of forgiveness and not vengeance, of protection and not destruction. But in the text as we have it, God still goes out and annihilates Sodom and Gomorrah afterwards. And there's still the kind of theology that this sort of retribution gives birth to, blaming people for the misfortunes that come upon them, while attributing good luck to divine approval. If people are poor, they must be lazy. If people are rich, they must be blessed by God. It's down low. It reminds me of an ecumenical baccalaureate service that I attended in my first church job. This was just after the Virginia Tech mass shooting, if you can distinguish that event in your mind from the parade of others before and since. The pastor chosen to preach that day actually told the graduating high school seniors that if they stayed true to their faith in college, God would protect them from the kinds of things that happened at Virginia Tech. I sat on the stage with several other local clergy and debated in my mind walking out right then and there. But let's face it, even if we go with this gracious, spare the innocent notion of God that our Old Testament passage argues for, we still have to deal with a deeper problem here. That's the problem of reality. To be frank, when you look around, the merciful God who answers prayers and saves the innocent doesn't always seem to be awake on the job. You and I know good and faithful people who are suffering from deeply unfair situations. We may even have been those people. We may even be those people. Political job firings, undeserved illness, loss of loved ones, accidents, unjust divorce proceedings, abuse, to say nothing of the plight of those among us who are immigrants, LGBTQ folks, Medicaid recipients, Ukrainians, Sudanese, and those poor Gazans. Who in the world has not known what it is to bargain with God as Abraham does, but without success? We cry out for help, we beg, plead, and argue, and we might as well be shouting in the wind. So then we come to our gospel for today with its lovely promises. Ask, and it will be given you. Search, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks, the door will be opened. And in the disappointments we have suffered or known others to suffer, we want to say to Jesus, that's a pack of lies. That's a bunch of empty promises that anyone living in the world can see mean nothing. We may feel angry and betrayed that we can't be like Abraham and bargain God into something fair or at least reasonable. You know, it's interesting, but bargaining is actually one of the stages in the grief process that the pioneering psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross developed to describe how people come to terms with loss, most often with their own dying process. In this bargaining stage, the terminally ill patient tries to make deals with God, promising to be good if God will give her a few more weeks without pain, or promising to devote his life to the church if God will heal him. It is in Kubler-Ross's depiction of this bargaining that I came to a deeper understanding of the promises in our gospel today. For example, in her book on death and dying, Kubler-Ross tells a story of an opera singer with cancer in her face and jaw. The woman bargains with God, asking God to let her perform one more time, but it's impossible. She's just too sick. Then shortly before getting all her teeth pulled in preparation for her radiation, she comes to Kubler-Ross's seminar where she tells the story of her life, her successful career, her battle with the cancer, the incredible gift of song that God has given her and that she is about to lose. And you know, Kubler-Ross called it the most touching performance perhaps of her lifetime, and pointed out that this patient in a sense did sing once more to that classroom of people. When I read that story, it sent me back to Luke, where I realized that Jesus is actually not all that clear about what you receive when you ask, or what you will find when you search, or what the door you knock on will open to. Maybe it won't be what we asked for, or at least not in the way we expected it. That's the mystery of this promise. The mystery is that we rail and beg and plead, and finally when it comes, it doesn't look the way we thought it would. What has been done cannot be undone, but something new can be done in its place. That is finally what resurrection reminds us, that God is constantly doing a new, unexpected thing. That cancer patient wanted to sing once more because it was the best way she knew to stir people's hearts, to share herself with others, perhaps to connect with God. And then God gave her another way to do all those things, a way which, without sounding a note, was the most touching performance of her lifetime. That's what Jesus promises us today: abundant and surprising grace. So go ahead, ask. You will receive. Amen.